panel, we are very fortunate to have people who do not talk about it. We others who actually have just gone and done it. Who are going to share their experiences. They're going to share all the wonderful things that energy brings, but also the challenges that they have encountered and continue to encounter on the way. So we'll first hear from Donside Hydro, and we got James, and we got Rick and Clive to talk to us about it, and then we got Brian who are just here from Udny Wind. And then hopefully we're going to have some time for some questions at the end as well. And there are two wonderful projects that Donside Hydro is looking into, which makes it unique. They've done quite a process which they're going to tell us about. But it's really a blueprint of how project can happen. First time this is happening.
Now I'm not
a lot of the universities
Everybody needed to pick up.
Community in Scotland.
Yeah.
So two tiny regulars, and we have them here, and we have a microphone. You're going to have to share.
Okay. You can have some of that again. I mean, literally, if you were to look out of this window, is it about 2 miles?
Yeah. I just had a look to see if you can see it, but unfortunately, it's down in the valley.
We're just down the road. So I am Jane Fullerton. I am one of the founder of the consulting scheme. I was involved in it before it was built. I'm the chair at the moment of Aberdeen Community Energy, and I'm also involved in quite a number of other community initiatives, including, it was very nice to see it mentioned earlier, the Wallace Tower, which is the tower that's been renovated in Sydney Park to become a community resource, and Rachel referred to it in terms of the air pump that we're getting.
Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. We're standing because we realise at the back it's a little bit difficult to see when people sit down. So, I'm from the dark side. I worked in the oil industry for 36 years. Came out at 55 and run around for a couple of years, geocaching a lot and doing various things. And then I decided that perhaps there's more to life than this, and there was a lot of good years ahead of me. I still had skills, I still had expertise that I could use. I decided to go on a council run walk up the Don, bumped into Jane, and just felt awe-inspired. I just thought, wow, what happened? What incredible! And it ticked every box for me. It wasn't a corporate scheme. It wasn't oil and gas. It was different people, and I have to say, it's one of the smartest things I've ever made.
I'm Clive. I'm also involved with the Donside generator, and I've been with the Wallace Tower, and you can actually see the Wallace Tower from this window. I first heard about the hydro in 2016 and the Kaye retreat. And as luck would have it, I had an insurance policy that had just matured. So I had a bit of money, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I don't see a good thing to do with it. So I'm investigating it. It's still here.
Yeah, I mean, you were an investor initially, Clive, but then you volunteered for several years. Your contract, you'll see quite volunteered so important. She's key to us. It's wonderful at what we do, but we also have a engineering background. So, fixing the finances and a lot of other stuff. Clive does the engineering, troubleshooting, things like that. I'm kind of more of a community engagement type person. That's what I bring to the board. So, with the goal, Well, I'll just tell you to move through like quickly area because I know we haven't got a lot of time. But I did try to custom do this for this event. So it's a little different from what we usually do, but we're focusing on that quite specific questions that
See
Daria.
them up there.
Okay, so that's actually a photographs of our scheme. The first one, this one is very early days, and you can see the hill in the background. It's just got some really tiny sticks on it. It's now full bloom forest. It's amazing. That was in spring 2017, and then this is quite a few years later, and you can see the turbine house was kind of orange there, and it's now this is what was meant to happen. It was meant to go a beautiful soul grey colour. That's why we picked that wood. So a lot of things might seem haphazard, but they're actually intentional. What challenges did we face? Well, the time scale, particularly with regard to the fix, which is the feed-in tariff payment, which I think Rachel referred to earlier. That was a very tight deadline, and that caused us enormous problems because we were very much in danger of not achieving that time scale. Capacity, skills, time, people. It was a contaminated site. It was where for those who don't know, Donside Hydro was built on the site of the paper mill, and there was a heap of rubbish there. And what the developers did was they all dumped it, they were going to build the hydro. So we actually had to deal with all of that as well. We had issues with the landowner, and there were other interest things that we had to consider, like the fisheries. The fisheries were not jumping up and down about us building a hydro. They were like, what's going to happen to our salmon? And there was a lot of negotiating with that. And there was also CETA. We had to work hand in hand with CETA and meet all their requirements, which we're quite happy to do. And then, of course, climate change, storms. Next thing. So, being a community group, none of us had particularly special skills. I was told about the scheme. It's one of the reasons I wanted to go and live in the village. I thought, gosh, they're going to build these screens and they're going to power the village. And I was really inspired by it. And when it was taken off the table by the builders, one of our numbers, who's unfortunately not here today because he's the real inspiration behind it all, but he couldn't be here today. He presented this idea to the village community group. And when I picked myself off the floor, because it was a £1.2 million project, I just thought, I want to be part of that. I stuck my hand up, and that was it. And so, in terms of our individual abilities and capacity to do something like this, we were just learning as we went along. We didn't have the skills. Particularly, we had to learn them, or we had to find people who had them. It was real exploration, really. And we were all volunteers, and we had to fit this into busy lives, families, jobs, you name it. So all this was being done in tandem with us living our lives, which was tough. And the Sinclair had to actually go part-time at work because he had to devote time to this. So he basically didn't get paid. So he paid his time to make the project work. Feed-in tariff, I mentioned the deadline for that was the 28th of September. And because we had applied for it 2 years previously on the 28th of September 2014. And if we hadn't we weren't producing electricity on that date, then the whole financial model would have crumbled. It would not have worked. So there was a huge amount of pressure. We experienced all kinds of delays and setbacks, and we just made the deadline and we were the 21st of September. We were 1 week before the cut-off point. And I think that, Cynthia asked me to mention this, but the whole fix thing in 2 years, it wasn't an appropriate timescale for a community group. It might be an appropriate timescale for a big business that had done this heaps of times and knew what they were doing. But for us, it was really, really hard. And I think that going forward, people who have power and influence and policymakers and decision makers should really think about that kind of aspect of it when they're devising on who should get what. FITS is no longer around now. It stopped in 2019, and I think the last payment was 2021. But I think it's power purchase agreements now. I don't know much about them, but I had a wee bit of a look before this event, see if I could maybe let you know if there was an alternative. And I think that is the alternative, but I don't know how that works. We didn't own the land. It was owned by the housing developer, and you can read it up there. They were really unhelpful. They procrastinated. They told us we could lease it, and then after months and months and months and months, at the 11th hour, they said, "No, you've got to buy it." And then they charged us an exorbitant amount of money for it, and it was contaminated land that we had to deal with. So we were really unhappy with the way that they dealt with us. And they could have actually been a lot more helpful.
Very, very.
Well, I did think about naming and shaming them. Well, I tell you, sanctuary. I mean, that's very ironic because it's a lovely thing. But the last sentence is just to let you know that Donside Village Community Association was one of the very first urban projects to apply to buy the land, and we were successful. A very rigorous process. It took about a year and a half. If I ever see a Scottish Land Fund application again, it will be too soon because it is a lot of work. But quite rightly, because it's a lot of money. So they let us buy the land. So now we're landowners as well as owning along with our neighbours. Funding. Do you want to speak to
Finance. So funding for us was a real challenge because typical UK banking sector, short-term profits, they want all the upfront information, which of course we could not provide. And besides which our economic model was so limited in, there's so many risk factors in it, that ultimately what we had to do was go to an organisation. We went to an organisation called Share Energy, who have been an absolute gem. And not only do they do our accounting, but they look after all of our shareholders, our bondholders. They do our administration behind the scenes. I had to be down south recently because of them. Wonderful bunch of people. If anyone's ever thinking of starting a unity scheme, do talk to Share Energy. They really are a valuable asset, both to the project and getting it off the ground and getting it started, but also once you're up and running, these guys, they've got a wonderful network because this is their business, this is what they do the whole time. They're experts on the accounting practices, the community benefit societies. All of these things, obviously, from my background, I knew nothing about nothing. Nothing about the energy sector, and you have to learn as you go along. And so, I can't believe here I am 11 years later, standing up talking to you guys about unity schemes. And in the past, it's very different. And we're spending time on the ground as well, volunteering, going up the river, putting giant with etc. These are things that I never dreamed I would ever do. So I'm eternally grateful for that day when I went to Fullerton and Kingfishers and jumped on this scheme, because it's been such a valuable thing to you, not just in terms of the skills that I developed and learned, but also the avenues and interests, etc. It's awakened in me. I didn't even know you were there. In fact, the constant pains my thinking plans. Banging that green drum.
Thank you, Nick. I think one of the last point I made on there was that we closed the share offer. And I think that was amazing as well, because we closed it on the 1st of August 2016. And by the 21st of August, we were turning people away. We had got £500,000. And it just showed a huge appetite among the population to buy into this and get a little bit of it. And we kept the share prices deliberately low because we wanted it to be affordable. So a lot of these schemes, the the bottom price is 250 or 500. We made it 100 because we thought that just might make it manageable. And we did get quite a number of local people buying shares, including Tom. So Peter and so climate challenges. Do you want to?
Yes, at the moment, we're running it, when I just looked about 10 minutes ago, it's producing 7 kilowatts, it's supposed to produce up to 100. And this is purely because of the low level of the river. We've had very little rain this year. I mean, we have such a wonderful weather in April. No rain at all. We need the rain. There have been 2 occasions in my life where I've been happy to see rain. And once was when I came back from 4 months in Bahrain, and it hardly rained at all. And the other time was now, when being a director of marketing. Yeah.
I think
But
it's
we
been-
do get extremes, don't we? That's the
we
problem.
do. I think
We get
that,
these very dry periods, but when we get the wet, boy, do we get the wet.
yes.
So, and of course, what we want is constant flow. If you get too much flow, you think the more flow, the better. But actually, we have what's known as the Goldilocks effect. Okay, and this is where, because we're reliant on the gradient, sorry, I'll take that back. Because we're reliant on the gradients, if the front end rises, so does the back end, and therefore you lose the gradient, and therefore what happens is, and it's Clive does all these beautiful graphs, you watch the power going up as the river level rises, and then it hits its peak, and then it starts dropping, and that's because the back end is rising to a point where we're actually losing. So, like Goldilocks, there is such a thing as too much water, and that's a real frustration. If anyone can hold it back.
You can see here, the water so high, it's heading over the top of that spillway, which means we can't increase the intake level can't increase, but the outflow level will increase, so we just lose it. The head of water.
I think, yes, and I think one of the things that's, is it's completely unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen next. We can't sort of say, well, we predict this is going to happen this year. We just don't know. We just get the mercy of the weather. This is a video that Rick took. And you can see, it just shows you, you'll see in a second when we get past the hydro, this is the kind of scenario that we've had to deal with, basically, and the aftermath of this. Got some great pictures to make you all a happy image. Look, now that gate is the entrance to the hydro. There's no way anyone is walking across that. And you can see it's on the path. So all of this is, I mean, it's look at the stuff that's building up in front of it.
That was November 2021.
And anything that's that's a shot of standing at the gate, thinking at the door, thinking can't get in there because there's a river in front of me. You just got to wait, and you can see all the stuff that's piled up. It's all in front of the turbine house, so it's all gathered up on the auto screen, and which is there to stop large things from going through features. And anything that stops the water flow stops the electricity production. So it's got to be clean, and it's got to be done by people. I think I'm sorry Rachel's not here because Local Energy Scotland were absolutely fantastic. And the Sinclair had more to do with them than I did, but they couldn't have been more helpful, giving us advice. So I think it was very nice to hear from Rachel earlier. We also had very good community support locally. It was, yes, I've said there about the share prices. It was loads of people just coming down and saying hello and getting involved. And promote a real sense of pride, I think, in an area that is actually on the index for mass declaration, because Road is not renowned as being one of the most affluent areas in Aberdeen, and that's put it mildly. But I think it's allowed people to have a sense of pride and something really positive happening in their community. And we had excellent PR support as well from Weber Shandwick. I think there was a mention because, you know, in terms of getting the share offer out there and all the rest of it, the bond offer, they were great. They went over and above there. And I think lots of people, it's funny that Richard said that you won't result in them bird watching, teacher watching tour.
Climate week trophies.
And it was right, Alison. It was. You know, the fact that we got these, he didn't know them for hydro tour at the end of it. And he was enchanted. And I think that's what happens to people. They just love it, which is great. Right. Okay, so the opportunities for us, community empowerment, skills development. Rick said it, I've said it, you know, I've learned things. Anybody that has any kind of connection with this field is developing skills that they didn't really have. Loads of volunteering opportunities, and we're always looking for volunteers. So if anyone's Aberdeen based and interested, just get in touch. We've also been very mindful of protecting the natural heritage around us. I mentioned the paper mill. The paper mill was one of the later additions. Apparently that whole area was covered in mills. We've got old maps, we can see it. Anything that we found that was ancient or belonging to the history of the area, we've kept and been trying to look after it. By building the hydro, we actually increased the flood capacity for the area. So we've actually helped with flood alleviation for that part of Aberdeen. The next one is education. Well, that's massive. We do that constantly, and it's one of our kind of core things that we want to do is educate, especially kids, especially young people, because they are coming next, they're the future. But as you can see from that, there's yoga groups, you know, a walking group wants to come. We had some pensioners from the Bridge of Dawn who just wanted to come and have a look around. So 10 of them turned up and they were delighted with what they saw. And we also participate in local annual things like Climate Week North East and Girls Open Days. Last year on Girls Open, we had over 100 people. They were absolutely exhausted at the end of it, but it was great afternoon. Excited?
I seem to remember Dario was on the last week.
Yes, that is where we met Daria, actually. Daria's, yeah, well, we've got a thing going now, haven't we, Daria? So,
yeah, so, you know, I spent generation of clean renewable energy was one of the big things that certainly I look forward to. Addressing climate change and positive actions, just mixing with people that are like-minded and have different thoughts. You know, it's great to actually hang out with people that didn't work in the oil industry, believe me. There seems to be a seeming of you thought, and that's about money. It really frustrates me. Raising awareness and providing formal education opportunities. The best groups to do, obviously, those 10 to 11-year-olds, they're just responders. They're wonderful. They're just great to deal with. Better than 15-year-olds who take wrong tackling, but there we go. It's still learning. It's going in there somewhere. Yeah, playing a part in raising positive profile and confidence of Tilly growing. People said to me, you're going to what? You're going to volunteer Tilly growing? Are you mad? Never had a flight in the lights up some guy to tech, but there you go. That can happen anywhere. In the street, Lord knows where, but honestly, not a problem. Yeah, again, you know, we brought people onto the board and we've supported them and it's great to actually see the confidence growing. Sarah couldn't make it today, but she's gone from being very shy and retiring now. Actively, I'm sure we've taken part in actually asked that she got. So, improving the landscape for people, investors. Yeah, I mean, the challenge really on the investment side of things is the scheme doesn't actually produce what we targeted to produce. So, and that's again around applying and the fact that we're limited with how much water we're allowed to take. And we take on further over a certain level, once the level drops below that, we don't have to shut down. So that seriously impacts on our finance model, which you can appreciate. However, thanks to Mr. Heaton and high inflation, big increase in feed-in tariff, that's really helped. And also the energy crisis too, because we sell our electricity through the grid. Every year we go out to tender, bid online through the Renewable exchange, and basically all companies bid for our power. And we award to not necessarily the highest bidder, it just depends. We like them on for the one that isn't, credentials. So we've sold to Ecotricity to I've been low vote for the last 2 years, because it's the challenge is as you change operator, that transition is a pain. Getting the new supplier on board and getting working their processes can be more trouble than it's worth for the extra 1.1 penny for your electricity. So if anyone wants to talk about that, we'll happily share my experience. Generating community fund, part of what we generate, the surplus that we have goes to Donside Village, for Donside Village to then use on the its community events. And also the so much to
So 9 years on, we have got 10 awards. The increasing flooding events that cause damage. The arguably the school is split twice, I think. There's always lots to do. We haven't said too much about INS, which is the invasive non-native species, but they are in our area. There's giant holly, there's Japanese knotweed, and Himalayan balsam, and rip and try and get them ticks on, and we'll keep it up, go out and do all these things. And they do it in conjunction with other groups as well. So, there's a huge amount of stuff going on here. Next one. Yeah, this is just a selection of photographs, just to let you see, it's always nice to have a picture. So there you go. That's incredible. The little palm and then the video that we saw, that you can see the extent of what happens there, what we have to deal with. That was our fence. It got literally bashed down by the floods and by all the debris that got the problem with it. And that was a particularly big problem.
That's the aftermath of that video you watched earlier. Once the water had gone down, what was left behind was
There.
an incredible logjam.
Look at that.
Normally, we would manhandle, personally handle, whatever the correct term is. We would get it out the way, we get our rates and we pull it off. But we just couldn't move it from like those. Couldn't shift it. Absolutely jam solid. So we had to get a mechanical digger in to come and actually physically move it.
That's one of the fences. It's just, you can just see it spread everywhere. This is before we had our metal fence, but for some reason we didn't have recent screen cleaning pictures, so we have to remedy that. Because screen cleaning is a massive thing. And next year, and this is one of the I think this was the first university
Yeah. I know, right? That's the stress of academia. It is then and now. You can see it.
So yeah, I'm sorry, we can go back. That's it. I just want to show you this as well. You mentioned earlier. This is another thing that's starting and it's become a regular event now. Is we do tours for developing the energy course at Nesco, and it's all in them where they come along and find out about the hydro, and it's great. Love it. And this is the volunteers building avian baskets to protect the ground and release them silently. Again, this is a great bunch of people, but everything we do is done by volunteers. And We rely very heavily on them, but we appreciate every single thing that you do. This is how we have done. And Clive usually wears pink shorts. I don't know either here. He's dressed up for you today or not, but
You. Stress down.
just so there you go. And there's some contact details for us if you want to get in touch. There's also a virtual hydro tour link there as well. So you know, if you want to tour the hydro without leaving your living room, you can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll take a seat wherever you want to. I think maybe if you shift your chair so we can see the screen properly. While Brian and Matt talk, okay? Live change. On screen now. So thank you so much. And now welcome to the second group and start on Brian from Aberdeen starts representing the communities. Do you want to do your own side?
My second, yeah, very thanks. I was carrying on, Mr. Shouting. My name's Matt, and this is Brian. We're both founding members of the only community turbine company, which the parent company manages the trust company. So we started two companies off back in 2011. And we operate an 800 kilowatt wind turbine out of Udny. I suppose we should say a little bit about how the project all started. We were both on the community council for all our sins. And the chairman brought in a visitor who said he'd been with his family in the States. And they'd gone to a free music concert. And he asked me why this concert was free. And apparently this community over in the States had a wind turbine which paid for all these community events. So he brought back this concept. He shuttled into the community council desk. And when he asked if somebody could help him with this project, we previously acknowledged that we would do that. That was a long time ago. So our wind turbine has income from our purchase agreement, PPA, and of course market energy, and we also get the feed-in tariff, which for our turbine is simply about, I think it's £170 per megawatt hour. We have a lot of questions for you, or for the ether, depending on which is most responsive. But what I should do is maybe just highlight what our objectives were, because without objectives, without goals, there's very little direction. Our objectives, obviously a bit of the money component from there. Our objectives were to make our community stronger, to bring people together, to give them a means of development status, which will allow them to take greater ownership of their community, of our community, greater responsibility for having achieved things in the community which they couldn't have without some form of funding. And it's made a huge difference. We've interacted with all levels of the community, including primary school children, and our lesson has been to teach people that this is their project, this is their community. What do they want to do with it? How do they want it to develop? I think this picture probably shows everything. I'll hand over to you, Brian.
And afternoon, everyone. As Mark says, we started the project is really this community buy into the project. Because without that, you can't go any further. It's easy to go into the Kaye or Fullerton and say, yeah, the community supports us. And they say, yeah, perfect. Show something you've done to be able to a big amount of community engagement. And so that's such a busy slide, but it shows all the different groups we went to. The biggest bit, not really what we idea ourselves, is to engage with the schools first. We took various schools that were not really, as prepared and funding agreement. And we engaged with both of them and got the case to make these models. But it was under the consultation process following by radio, like in that was flavour. So they came with all the models, but the beauty of that is all the other display on consultation event. All the areas of previously which we worked at. So we did a new turnout for that performance. And that's what we're doing is in terms of concept to the community and say, what do you think of this? And support. And the initial reaction we got was very positive. But after that, probably then we realized the old community balance. And I think the same which funds that are not even put the post about in the 10-12% return. We got 54% return, which was to be delightful. Even more than I thought, 5% of people was quite serious. So it's a good indication that we have a community behind us. But probably with community engagement is not just have one session, have it continually. We did a we would do follow-up events after that. Just to keep it here. Because you tell what's happening, it was interest. So people going, that is a selection of the different events we went to. The one thing we did, I witnessed is after we did the initial thing, we were building models, we then engaged with the schools and stop and market and even lessons in model building of environments. And walked on the wind tower, in the kids school after reading books, and have a competition to generate this energy. So if you engage with kids, it's something like the food we do. And we still continue with that. We take the primary service from both three schools and with the Poland as well now. I'm giving a tour in the top now, then the park and the event centre to give them different talking that we've done. Just to try and get younger people involved and interested in what we're doing.
These kids now are all in their mid-20s. Yeah, well, their own family. And when we did these projects with them, we first taught them about the electricity network of North East Scotland and Peakhead Power Station and Western Hill Power Stations. A little bit about environmental issues, a bit about how they can do their electricity needs at home, and building these models, which were little motors on top of wooden pedestals. And they stuck the fork onto the axle of the motor and put in some sticks. We put their little turbine blades on. And just, some of them wanted lots of blades. Then they realised having fewer blades and turning them a little bit gave a bit more electricity. So all that millivolts. And that actually led them on to what would they do if they had an 800 kilowatt turbine, which is 57 metres high, sitting in the field across from the village. And that engagement, it's hard to measure the results of it, but it's a very, very worthwhile exercise.
We're going to sort of lead barriers. Planning permission was a big barrier. It was so complex. That basically there was 5 of us directors doing it, and we're all reasonably able people, but we didn't say all. But doing the plan permission was a complex thing, so we actually had to farm that out and for that. And I think the resultant application is something 56 pages long. You can double check that. If you go to the website, it's still sitting there. So that was time on, I think it was 2 weeks before the meeting, the planning application. I've got when the publisher council when they refuse it, because up and going from the National Road Traffic Service. But thankfully, the board was answering basically, when the funding of the carbon emissions through. But anyone with keen eyesight believes in the line. It says if you don't have the nothing to buy, you have committee. So, what believe in committee, you can go to all, but never mind. They can't always get right. But that took us a fair bit on. I think our interest is at that stage, we not really spent £40,000 in the project before we actually got the plan permission. So it's quite a big expenditure, a massive risk to get there. Yeah, the member funding finance the project, it cost us £1.4 million to be. We were setting up in 2010 on feed tariff was just being spoken about. So all our corporations got one of the renewable option certificates. So we obtained £300 million and we managed to secure £500,000 of grant funding, and then went to the materials bank and we offered us other 100,000 as a bond pool. Then the tariff came before we signed the dotted line. So we worked out what would be more beneficial to us. And obviously, feed-in tariff is a lot more beneficial. And but then what we found is if we accepted feed-in tariff, we could hand back the grant money a bit more. So instead of borrowing 800,000 from 2 years, we got more than 1.4 million in 2 years, which is quite a major commitment. We managed to, I think, work it over 3 millions. So obviously we pay interest income for loan 1, which is interest on loans 2 and 3. Then when loan 1 was paid, we paid capital fee. We're now at the stage, because we started the operation in 2011, we're now at the stage where our last loan, the final loan, comes to an end next year. So next year we will be loan free. The funding of the all the initial funding you have to get going, to get down the measure, bits and pieces. But the major concern for us not time was a grid connection. We asked for a grid connection, and after a long story, we found that also the grid connection. We said, if you find more data, and then we said, we have a new deposit. The connection charge is £250,000. So we'll be 54,000 for the deposit. It's actually nothing. So thankfully we got involved with Social Investment Scotland, with the modern source, and actually managed to grow this money until the end of the project. So that helped us get going. But I mean, a bit closer to them, it's when we did that was planning issue. So the whole thing that went down a lot in that stage. So it's some nervous days, but you've got to go through.
And unsecuring loan as well. And I think the guys signed up within 7 seconds, but they'll give us the money on that. Oh, right. I just wanted to put a little background perspective. Who are we? Why? We're the only ones with the, not the only ones, but nearly the only ones with the community turbine. In fact, we've got the first community-owned developed turbine on mainland Britain, so I'll be happy to do that in the 11th. So that sounded quite good. We're a group of 5 people. We didn't know each other beforehand. I'm a geologist. Brian's the entire regional BT manager from the southeast and make things happen. The guy who had the idea from the States, he how did he start his position? Rural economist. Yeah, so he knew quite a bit about what we were going into. We didn't. 2 other directors, One is an architect, runs a company, I run my own company. And the last person worked in the oil and gas industry, manufacturing heavy chains. How all these things relate to a turbine, you might wonder, well, they do, because what it requires is complementary skills. It requires 5 people who didn't otherwise know each other to work together, problem-free, there's no such thing, but with a mindset to be tolerant, to compromise, to push on through problems, to find out things that you don't know and understand. And in this way, we take a lot of the problem under our own umbrella. I think we have an education and if we could be successful, we could pay that company to run the whole project for us. And the only thing we didn't know what we were doing, when we were doing. A little bit like you guys, we can relate to everything you said today. And I suppose we weren't too jaded when we came out of that process. After all, we did have a whopping great turbine sitting in the field, so that was something to be proud of. But it took a long time, 6 years. And at any time during those 6 years, we could have just thrown the towel in and walked away. We had nothing to do, nothing to gain, nothing to lose personally. So it was a big gap. Main challenges. Okay. Yeah, current challenges. Okay, so new starts, food intelligence has already ceased in 2019. Food intelligence guaranteed for 20 years, it goes up at the RPI. It ends in 2031. Now, the feed-in tariff at normal prices, let's forget what the price was a couple of years ago, our feed-in tariff gives us 2/3 of our income. The other third comes from the power purchase agreement, which we have with this chemical smart expenditure. We get about 80 odd quid a megawatt hour for the power purchase agreement, 170 for the feed-in tariff per megawatt hour. So when that feed-in tariff finishes in 2031, we have to start figuring out now what we do. We bought the old Minstrel Hotel in Aberdeen for the £100,000 or £200,000. We got a grant of £100,000. We put 1,000 into it. The building is a real 300,000. Yeah, the building is a real asset to the community. We employ people. Okay, so yeah, challenges. Sorry? Yes. Some of that. Tasty cakes. Yeah, finance. We have to start thinking about finance now. Trust company costs £140,000 a year for government stuff. Add on grant funding, another £100,000. We're able to give that a overdraft now year by year. But the amount of gift aid we're having available between 2031 and 2036 for the turbine theoretically finishes in the top 68,000. Which if nothing happens, we're going to sell the building and hopefully the people will. So we've got quite a few challenges. We hope a new group will take on these challenges. We're not, no, seriously, we're not getting any younger. If anything happens to one of us, if it has done, you have to think about security of the operation. Who's going to run it? How can we run? What other difficulties have we got coming up? We relate to everything Fraser. It's still here. I think you're glad that. We relate to everything Fraser said. So we learned to be optimists. That's really only critique comes positively moving forward. We are fiercely jealous of the intelligent Danish team. And we wonder why in Scotland are we able to find a way. So much so that come up in and so that we don't know, we don't understand. But we keep asking this question. Why? I think every community, every parish in Aberdeenshire, in Scotland got a wind turbine. And I think part of it is the big ask to expect 5 folks to get together and actually do something intelligent about falling out of one another. And it is a huge ask. Huge ask when you've got a business, when you've got a company to run or a shop to hold down, when you've got a family to look after, and nobody in their right mind is doing it. Couple of very important points. We've got an E48 turbine manufactured by a German company called Enercon, 48 refers to the diameter of the rotor. It has a big concrete pod which has got, I don't know, 450 tons of concrete in it to hold the thing down. Enercon don't make that turbine anymore. Nobody does, but there might be their something. So when this turbine finishes, what do we do? If we put another E48 up, if that was possible, which it isn't, we would have no feed-in tariff. We wouldn't have enough money to run this company and employ the people we do. So we think we can't make the concrete pond any bigger. So our only solution, we think, is to move to something like Enercon's smallest turbine now, which is 133 meters high, and it's 4.26 megawatts. That would give us enough revenue. I think that's why the turbines have gone the way they've gone. It's going to be in time. You need the money to come in. We have purchase agreement, pay back the bank for the capital, and to provide enough funding for operating costs and funding for your parent customer. Eventually, there's going to be concrete pods dotted all around the country by the thousand. If they don't get taken up, the turbine gets taken down. We now have the prospect of wondering, can we get a new turbine? Where's the capital coming from? Where can we put it? Have Aberdeenshire Council got a strategy on the size of their turbine? Initially, they didn't want turbines to go at a certain size, so they all look similar around the countryside, which from an impact, regional impact point of view, is quite reasonable. You can't get small turbines from all that, so everyone's in the same condition of government. So there's a huge number of unknowns moving forwards. We just hope the infrastructure, the local government, national government, groups like Big Barrier working away in the background will help to pave the way and make it slightly easier for us to do this in continuity. Okay, how much stock is this going to produce? We're paying back a bank loan of about £120 a year. That will finish next year. That'll be good. Operating costs are probably about £50 a year. Servicing is £40,000 a year. More servicing in the summer. So we put £2.7 million over to the trust company. The trust company has given out £600 in grants. Grants for our local parish and further afield to do innumerable things, anything from buying IT equipment for the primary schools to getting the grand piano and Addo calls trying to keep service and the next question of money to sending kids over to Newfoundland from the academy on a music trip to refurbishing and renovating some local buildings, providing local groups and funds to do stuff they want to do, buying currency. So it's been very successful in that side of things, and we might have to let the money go, but sitting in there with about £1 million sitting in your account somewhere. We are going to need that money in order to get us through to 2036. If we don't start funding now, we're going to start later on. What else have we done? Yeah.
When we started out, we the fund directors and the new staff, and then we thought, well, we can't run them just everyone signals. So we actually managed to get a member of staff and managed to find a living office, and it is a very small office, which you still have in Hickory. But in 2019, 2020, this property you see here, if you want to market, it was a hotel, it's called a Lisbon Hotel, which had become defunct. Basically, you could make a profit out of it, so it just after 8 years. So with a lot of work and innovation of James said, with the Scottish Land Fund, it takes forever to get through them, but the purchase price was around about 300,000. I mean, once you get £100,000 from by Scottish Land Fund. So that helped. It's now after renovated how you built. It's actually finally done because in 2018 we did a consultation exercise for the March revenue, where we got planning in Scotland to run the consultation exercise. Really large expense. We did a very professional job and actually got all the information and probably £2 for us. We basically showed us what the community wanted. And that led us on to say that what the community want, we really want the community partner. Hence, the reason for purchasing the front of the hotel, and we wanted the community traffic. And you just see them serving a bit of the coffee here. So we've managed to actually, over time, we've actually got the keys in the property on the Friday. The following Monday is when the whole thing was shut down for COVID. So we didn't get much time with that. So, but after that, we slowly progressed it. We've done a lot for it. The little trailer, you see there, we've got what we call a community shed. It's not full done, but it's a place where we have spare stuff and basically those especially for the big warm thing that they didn't have the water. And the village of the is the local people from themselves. And all we've done at inside here is because then this is big no cash. People have to come in the door but have to see what we just do in for themselves. So thank you of the site plan. We've got the bike shelter built up. And then we do the various rooms, and then we spot now we can hire out for various events. But in the community sections, in council or first responders, we don't charge them. But it's a recreational group, we can charge them, but as the community sponsor, the communities behind it. We give them nothing. Okay. This is just what Mark said at the start, that we're all community based. That's what we wanted to do in the community. So that's just a selection of the groups that uses the very simple now that didn't use anything like that before. So to us, it's a big challenge. The party is actually called Coffee 48. The 48 being the 40 would cover. So it's sort of tied in that way. And as much as Encoin built it. So there was one actual cycle event we had, and you see down the bottom that actually Encoin sponsored some of us to be that. The fact that one of us.
You say us.
So it's just various things from events at Christmas to actually to second. That one is a Jubilee event we had for the Queen's Jubilee, and that was in Europe. So all different events that didn't happen before that would happen. And Mark mentioned grant funding. Yeah, we spent something like £670,000 in grant funding. And these are just some of the people who supported. We want to talk about the program. there's an organisation called Renewables, who actually look after additional needs. And they used to be used in, the St. Ellen, the nobody's important, but we actually get back to them looking at 30,000 buttons towards it. So it's quite a considerable effort. The only on the right, your picture here is on the green board, where we took a massive 70,000 tons, but they managed to acquire another 100,000 tons. So we almost a 200,000 project, really trying to support it. So it's a really nice thing. Actually, one important format is the piano unit, Hydro, the food shelf, we've actually helped them quite a bit, providing Frenches, all bits and pieces, just something functionality with that. We've got a very active task group, and actually, back in 2010, when we applied for the water grants, they said, well, what do you do to Harlem? And one of them said that to path, will be secure, and it's time we told them nothing happened. And last year, it finally got built, it's not right good, and these people didn't really help them to do it. Other things, tennis ball, there's floodlight using the night here, and the bowling green thing quite a bit. But as time's pressing, I'll stop it, but I'll be in for any questions.
Take your seats at the front, all of you, and I will pop around and see if in the audience, online. Not seeing anything online just now. Any hands of any audience? Who's in the back, Eric? The person.
Sorry, it was a millisecond before you.
Thank you. Kind of question around the capacity side of stuff that's come up in all the panels. So kind of how to get communities, support communities engaging in creating community assets, especially community energy. It's all well and good having like the policy and the legislation that allows communities to do it. But what Fraser identified was kind of like, you also need the capacity of funding, you also need the time, you also need the capacity of expert knowledge. So kind of, I mean, CARES is a really good example of kind of like, okay, that's a policy solution to the funding issue. Talk about in the video. But so kind of my question maybe to yourselves as involved in these kind of projects, to the room is, what would be an equivalent to CARES in kind of like creating the time that you guys have obviously given up so much of your own time and also creating bodies of expert knowledge to help communities like have community energy assets in every town and village across.
Yes, I was in a little bit to that. I was going to say, because obviously the climate urgency is quite substantial. The early community project takes 10, 15 years to put up the ground when you're going to run out of time. Right? It's not less important, but it's not that. So the question is, if you were to look back and say, well, what would be necessary to accelerate it, to make it happen, let's say, in half the time or in a quarter of the time, if that's at all possible? Because of course, community engagement process is taking. So what would be the few pointers that would make it possible to achieve?
Well, I'm just thinking of an instance that an instance that I feel is relevant and it's worth mentioning. We are part of the Repowering Forum of Community Energy Scotland, and they're pushing on. They're doing a great job. I was talking to Mark Hall one day, and he was up with a student working with us, and I asked how things were going, and they were talking about engaging with the government, with the Scottish government. And he said, we've got a slot, they've given us 5 minutes. And I thought that basically answers every question as to why we're where we're at now. It's going to be an uphill battle. That's where the changes need to happen. So there's an integrated infrastructure where things complement each other. What was mentioned first off, I think, in the Danish approach, which is faithful mandate, and I like those words. The councils could, in theory, and at the stretch for time, so maybe in practice can match in theory, but if the councils could pave the way in terms of spatial mandate and planning, if the government could pave the way in terms of an infrastructure to assist enthusiastic community people, then maybe more of these schemes would get built. You know, and maybe the councils could take a percentage, and you know, in sort of payments for paving the way, you scrap my back, I'll scratch yours, sort of thing. And in terms of councils, we're all in big money, but every little helps. What it really changes is community attitudes, and I haven't a clue what the payback for that is, but it's big. It's big, isn't it? Sorry. Yes.
I mean, just to speak to what Kaye said. Although I was involved in the project, it's very clear that 256 page submissions are what's putting people on. The bureaucracy, the paperwork, etc., has to be reduced, because basically that personally, I would just say that's it for me. Thank you very much. And without people that have expertise in that area, actually, I'm saying one resource that actually does that for multiple organisations, because to try and upskill yourselves to answer all the right questions, you can need paperwork, etc. We don't have to make it hard to get anything done with this country. We invite everyone to have an opinion, and sometimes we just need to do it, you know. And that's what frustrates me. The pace of progress is so frustratingly slow. There's lots of good talk, lots of good ideas. It's very important. And we go forward. And I think that's what frustrates people. And then the apathy builds, and then everybody becomes apathetic. Realistically, you know, it's going to take through the So, I mean, I have a question for you. It's really about the fix, the feeding times. Okay, we're what's called a micro hydro, so we're limited to what we're able to produce. But we could produce more. But our feeding tariff does not allow us to do it. So we actually have wasted capacity. Now, I don't know if that applies to the wind side of things, but certainly to our side of things, we could produce more. Albeit not very often, but you know, the opportunity is an opportunity to cost us loss, because you don't get that chance again. So we actually have to cap ourselves on the whereas we could produce up to 135. I mean, it's actually wet. And it's not many people say that. The other thing is, again, like these guys, feed-in tariff is actually 3/4 of our income. After 20 years, we're now at year 9, so we have another 11 years to go. What's going to happen at the end of that? Because believe me, what we sell to the market is nowhere near to cover the costs of running the school. So are we just going to have a museum or a White House that people can come along to and say, wow, 20 years ago, people used to make electricity out of this place? And that would be really, really sad. So there needs to be something that's out there, because, you know, like these guys, we've got capital costs. You know, if we have an equipment failure, it's going to be a long lead time, but also a lot of money. And we don't have those reserves, because the feeding tank barely keeps us fit for the maintained like water, like only just. So yeah, we need to know Why are we capped? Even if we could just sell the excess, let's forget feed-in tariff, but still sell the excess as well and get our maybe 17 something like that. The feed-in tariff is significantly more. It's 40 odd pennies in total. So it's feed-in tariff. So it's quite a significant part of our income. The loss of that is really huge. It's something that's time spent on project. No.
So I've been reading through that the loss of feed-in tariff is a sizable condition. I mean, you may be able to look at these new figures. We can't. One provision says that it stops. Yeah, so that is the heart of all the limitations. How do we speed it up? The planning process could speed up, definitely. But just as important is the big connections. We were up to the Tasmanian wood in the slides. That is after the photograph of our own turbine. It's not a turbine one, it's in the middle of the road. It's got a TV connection. We've got 1 megawatt capacity just now. We use that 4 megawatts. And that was without the mega. But that would cost me money. So we're very connected to what what we're looking into is railways, if we can find a developer putting up a good farm, we will develop some additional turbine that we would be happy. But really, we've got the power we have already on the climate commission, so it's another way forward. We've got to look at things because otherwise, in years' time, we'll start struggling.
What was really thinking, it used to be like own planning, country, countryside planning, it used to be firmly there, but like what we gave in Mcdougall. Coming back to that, we wasn't quite inspired, but it was essential to this development of the built, small idea, everything to put in place. It just feels that it's a barrier after barrier. We talked about our barriers, we talked about words, and we did it because we had a passion and we believed in it, but it shouldn't be difficult, really. It shouldn't be difficult. And I'm sure that some environments people will be concerned.
I wanted to very quickly mention that on the Barry side of things with the grid connection. SSE are a big powerful company, and it's a lot of the oil companies doing the oil industry at the top of the pyramid. Had we not come up with 55 grand, we'd have been at the bottom of that ladder. No prioritisation for fuel groups, which, okay, we take it as it is, but it's quite hard going when, how can you get that money when you've no planning permission? You don't know whether you're going to get planning permission, and you haven't even got a land lease agreement. So, difficult.
We reflect that when we talk about itself. And the fact that the oil industry was so well that was one of the things that we really didn't like about it. And it's a bit like the thing that we described as who's got the money? Who's getting it?
Well, it's interesting when I first joined the board. That's always had an interest in finance. It's not actually my background. It's had an interest in it, so I took that on. And then Sinclair took it to one side and he said, you've got to remember this project is not doing that. This project is also about the environmental benefits, about the education benefits, about all those intangibles that we can't put the price on. And it was just like one of those black hole movies. There is more to life than we do. There are more important things like the climate and lots of other things that we appreciate. That's what community theories can do. I can turn you from the dancing.
1, 2, and 3.
Okay, 3.10 and what?
So guys, thank you very much for your contribution. One thing that
comes to my mind. I'm not sure to what extent that is credible solution for the problem. I got amazed by, just one energy machine and it's driving two different communities. Each of them separate. But the idea is that particular part, speaking about education, can you monetize that? Can you do some type of projects with the university or something to work together towards having, all the expertise that you guys have is amazing. And it's something that potentially can bring benefits. In terms of the shareholding, sometimes you got, I think at least Donside Hydro for sure have shareholding and also bonds. You need both of them. In terms of the shareholding, is that money that shareholders keep for themselves, or do they back somehow that to the community?
Next.
Yeah, just, I'll make a quick statement and then I'll do my question. 7th of May next year, Scottish parliamentary elections, 6th of May the following year, local government elections. I think you've got the power to make that a manifesto and actually see whether you can. As a local government person, I totally concur with you to find a way for a long job. But my question really is, know what you know now. And rather than 15 years, what would be the one nugget of advice you would give to projects coming forward?
Rachel, because I didn't, okay. Rachel,
Hi, Rachel from represented two community councils. The oil and gas guys, engineers I speak to say that there's maybe 15% of the jobs available in renewables that would be compared with in oil and gas. So they reckon that they're being totally sold down the river, and there may be 15% jobs left. And I was wondering, how much capacity do you think there is in community energy to provide jobs for experienced oil and gas engineers to use their skills, to keep their skills? The way they're saying they're being treated is really good.
I've just got one, in answer to the first two questions, I think one word would probably take things forwards, and that's communication. More people work together, things will come out of that process. That will show that is what's going to happen.
Very strong, I think we should engage in these projects. If you have a big problem, know them, engage them, discuss it. When after that, make a decision, then don't say, forget about it. But it's been, if you need bad ideas, tough, don't say, we get on with it. Otherwise, you never get through it.
If I can ask, and also it's an asking question, would you absolutely. I think the positives that come out of it are far outweigh the negatives. We know from having been the guys in the year in, and burnt out well. They were in its time, they were draining because you've been working on for the best part of 2 years before you can start to produce energy. So that's not only considerable input, but it's time and effort. I say I was fortunate not to be able to have public something, but I've always been very happy in my career as well to actually just pick up on things and keep them going. And that's what I'm good at. And that's why it's good that I came in on the build, because I actually love keeping the thing going and ensuring that we're producing as much as we can. Yeah, we've got a great community spirit amongst us as directors. It's like you guys, you're all Asian.
You do all your own bookkeeping.
Sorry?
You do all your own bookkeeping.
No, that's where share energy comes in. That's what I have to pay someone else to do that. But we're all, and with every year I'm raising and every year we ask for new directors and every year we're just not on the We do open doors, we do all the other things depending on who show use of it, and they're not, oh, that's what the, would you like to come and volunteer? Oh, no, you just. Really good. And that's really frustrating. You know, we do the same thing with the,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Private actually, private local school, and told that all the trees you've got plants and how you get around, and somebody sticks their hand up. And I said, can I speak to you later, but that's all I got you.
That not enough. You know, if you don't do it, we'll never get anyone. It would be nice to get more community involvement. And it's that continual. And we, you know, it's the young blood. We need the young blood in the Indian because we're all over the place. Succession plan, yeah. Very, very challenging.
I know.
Yeah.
Just assume that who's going to go off, it was five and five of us directors, nobody can trust the option going 2 3 which gives a lot of the skill of industry. So we need the new stuff to be done. I mean, the main centre is a field that provides the community can't feel actually employ 9 people. So it's gone into a business or anything else. Some problems with identifying problems, but it's stories of building and that must be anything. There is a warning to us for people, and if it doesn't, we'll see.
Yeah, I just wanted to just add on to that very quickly. When it works, you get a real buzz out of it. So I'm sure you guys have done. Yeah, well done.
Want him to get us out of the room, which is nice. So, yeah, we can work to bring some intelligence and chat more and probably, but I would thank you all again very much for your time.
And people all the questions earlier, they were really.
Yeah, I know.
We'll take it out of people to see, got people, take it out of people as well.
Yeah, no, I will.
Thank you.
Yes, I did. The bit at the end best. But yes, I move on itself. We have another presentation, something only. It might not be those chores, but you know,